right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be reviewing Chandra Flameshaper together. Brand new mono red walker from Foundations. What does she bring to the table that's interesting and unique from the other Chandras? Well, let's talk about her stats first. We've got 106 hit points at level 60, of course, and then her mana bonuses are kind of typical for Chandras, actually, except for, the earlier ones. You got 5 on red, 4 on black, and 3 on green, -2 on white, and -1 on blue. I always thought that those should be the other way around, but I don't know. To me, white is sort of similar to red in that regard, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. And then she's got her 3 abilities there. As always, Chandras never really have a lot of high hit point totals, so that's no surprise. And her mana bonuses are pretty typical. No big problems there. You always want more hit points on a Planeswalker, though you're always going to want a few more. Okay, her deck limits. This is where things start to get a little sideways here. 8 creatures, 7 spells, 4 supports. Even though we don't love having 4 supports, it kind of clues you into what the developers and designers had in mind for this Planeswalker. She's all about getting aggro, playing big creatures, slinging spells, and not really relying on supports to make that happen. So when you get a Planeswalker whose deck limits are that way, you just got to kind of think about what is best for her. You just got to think about what is best for them when you're building a deck. Now let's talk about her abilities. You got the first one, Playing with Fire, ability 1 for 5 loyalty. Pretty cheap. Discard a spell card at random. Then the first 2 cards in your hand gain 6 mana, and if not, gain 6 mana. So this is a very situational ability. Discarding a spell card at random, the way it used to work before they quote-unquote fixed it, is it would only discard a spell card at random if it didn't have any mana in it. So if you drew into a spell that you didn't really need, or it just didn't have mana in your hand, you're just kind of stuck it somewhere in your hand where you could save it for later, then you could put mana into the first 2 cards in your hand. You just got to rearrange your hand a bit, and they get a pretty good benefit of 6 mana to each of them. But if you don't have a spell in your hand, then you just gain 6 mana for 5 loyalty, which sometimes can come in really handy. And that tends to be actually the way I've been using her the most. There are times where I'm already pretty in control of the game. I just really want whatever is in my hand down on the battlefield, so a spell is less important than the creature or support that I'm trying to get down. So sometimes I'll discard the spell for that reason. But it's not a great ability. It has some uses to it, but I liked it better when it worked the way it did before. And now it's just really been a kind of a severe downgrade. So not an ability I'm going to be working with that much, but it does come in handy sometimes. Spreading Wildfire, ability 2, 18 loyalty. That's a huge jump from 5 to 18. So why is this one so expensive? Reinforce target non-creature you control 4 times until end of turn. That creature gains haste, imminent death, and the elemental subtype. So there are a few things about this ability. I actually really like it for certain things. It's a great finisher. It's mainly based upon the creatures you're going to use. So you definitely, when you're using her, want to use bigger creatures so that you really get to reap the benefit of this ability when you play it on a larger creature. Smaller creatures, you're going to go from like a 2/2 to an 8/8. So that's not really going to do a lot for you most of the time. So you want to use this on creatures that, are going to be 6 power and above. And you're really going to want to use it at a time where you're either about to win or getting close to it, and this will just kind of put you over the top because the creature is going to gain imminent death. So by the time, depending on, how many reinforcements it has already when you use it, it's going to get imminent death. So it will die by your next turn anyway, if it's not reinforced. So you're kind of just putting all of your chips on the table and going for the win there when you use this ability. So that's why I think it's 18 loyalty, because it's meant to be a finisher. Most of the time, you're probably not going to be needing it. But if you're not really using her first ability, and I'm guessing that you probably won't be, then this ability is fine to cost that much. For me, at least. Would it be better if it costs a little less? Yeah, of course. Then you can use it a little bit more often. But I understand what they were going for. This is meant to be just a way to win games fast. So if you're able to get to the loyalty, then you'll be able to do that. Turning into a conflagration, ability 3, 25 loyalty. Destroy all creatures and non-land supports. Deal X damage to your opponent's planeswalker. X is 3 times the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Another very situational ability because you're wiping out your opponent's side. This ability I feel like is way inferior to Liliana of the Veils ability for the same cost, because that ability is winning games on its own. This one isn't really so much. It will bump things back into your favor depending on what's in your hand and what you're destroying. If you're playing land supports, then that will help as well to make sure that you maintain that advantage if your opponent isn't playing a lot of land supports. And the damage that this ability does isn't usually that much. You have to really make sure that either you're playing a lot of creatures and putting them into the graveyard, or you are playing against an opponent who's doing the same sort of thing, like a grist or something like that. But this ability isn't normally going to win games for you, but it can sometimes help you out of a jam. It's very expensive though, and very few times where you're going to use this ability over other ones. So not my favorite, but it does have some niche use. But here is where she gets really good. Give Me Fuel. Her passive. At the beginning of your turn, convert 3 gems to red. Then you may discard a card if you do draw a card. So this might not seem like a big deal, but if you're always converting 3 gems to red without having anything on the board on your side, that means you're going to be able to keep a good tempo going, provided that you either swap those gems or you put other gem converters into your deck. Just a couple should be enough, but that should really give you all the mana you need. I guess that's why they gave us less than 5 supports for her, because this ability basically frees up a slot that would normally go to gem conversion. So that's pretty cool in that way. Then you may discard a card if you do draw a card. I only really ever use this ability in the very beginning. As you'll see in one of my decks, I'm really just trying to get to creatures as fast as I can. So if I draw in my opening hand a spell or support I don't need, then I'll just chuck it with this passive and get to a creature I want faster. But it's really all about that, converting 3 gems to red no matter what. Not only is it going to be giving you mana and gems to swap into, but if you put something like Cryptex in there with it, then you're converting 8 gems to red per turn, which is huge. And that's really why she's a very strong planeswalker for fast wins. And I'll show you how I do that soon. This passive ability is massive, and it's actually one of the best passive abilities I've ever come across in this game. So it's definitely worth building for. And even if you don't build for it, it's giving you massive opportunities for high gem conversion rates. So sometimes you will just right away off the bat start with a huge cascade, which is pretty cool to see. I mean, that's so much better than relying on Koth 1's first ability to create red gem matches for you. She definitely beats Koth in that regard. So these are what I would say are her pros. Her fantastic passive ability can gain you tons of mana, as I just explained. Her second ability can end games fast, and her third ability can reset the board and serve as kind of an extra win con, though I gotta admit, it's rarely that. It has won me a couple games against a really annoying Ajani that was just taking forever to get things going. So using that, I had to spam that ability like 2 or 3 times to actually get ahead of that game and win it. So it has worked for certain things. Her cons, though, only 4 support slots, which right now supports are really good. Red spells have gotten better with things like Chaos Warp and Molten Collapse. So it's not as big a deal right now, but it can be in the future. Her second ability is really expensive, and also she lacks built-in draw to benefit from all the mana gains. So my decks that I've been using the most kind of take that into account. So let's talk about those right now. This first deck I'm going to share with you is the deck that I use the most to take advantage of her abilities here. So we got one I'm calling Dragon Tribe, because there are a few things happening with it. There are a lot of different synergies. We're going only with 2 spells. Dragonhawk Fate's Tempest. This creature is key if you want to win fast with Chandra, because it does so much for you. It's going to be getting you cards with free mana. It's going to be dealing a lot of damage. And especially when doubled up with Twin Flame Tyrant, we're going to double up all the damage that we're doing. But we'll get there. There are a lot of things to help you get the pieces you need into play. Chimil, the Inner Sun, with its Discover 4 twice, means that you can pick the cards that you want to start with next turn, and they're going to have half their mana in them already to start out with. So that's going to be great. Bonehorde Dracosaur is good for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's a 6/6 body. It's got Berserker and First Strike. So if you get it powerful enough, it will take care of some creatures that you might need to deal with in your pursuit of a quick win. But really, what the more important part about it is, at the beginning of your turn is Discover 4, then gain 6 mana. So we're going to be also discovering on top of the Chimil, and we're also going to be gaining 6 mana, putting that first card in your hand. And then it's creating a gold token as well as something that can hopefully give us mana later on in the turn. Maybe Dragonhawk will break it or something. Cryptics for the extra red mana generation. It's going to be good. Mana Crypt is also going to be converting to red, and it's also going to be able to give us a card with full mana when we hit the mana field there. So that's going to be another way of getting a lot of mana into our hand. Imperial Hellkite is maybe one that you might not have thought of as a good card to play in here, but I'll tell you why. Because if you're using that second ability, you're going to be giving your creature imminent death. But with this dragon, you're going to be reinforcing your dragon creatures at the beginning of your turn. So you're going to be offsetting the imminent death countdown by reinforcing them every turn. So you won't end up losing your creature that you use the second ability on in case you didn't actually win that first time you used that ability. So it's a good way to keep your creatures safe from the imminent death, and it's just going to be helping you up the damage, especially when you got things like Twin Flame Tyrant down. If you're reinforcing your creatures every turn, you're basically going to be quadrupling the damage you do with Twin Flame Tyrant. It's actually more like tripling up your damage that you're going to be doing for creatures like this. I mean, I guess it's diminishing returns as you go, but you're going to be reinforcing creatures, so it doesn't really matter that much. You're going to be winning pretty fast, especially with Chroma's Memorial in here, giving your creatures haste. So that's really why it's in here. But, you know, if you put Vigilance on a Bonehorde Dracosaur that's going to have First Strike, it might be a good blocker there. So that also is going to be a nice way to keep your creatures safe and your planeswalker safe from creatures. Couple of spells in here. Chaos Warp is a good one because it's just a great all-purpose removal spell. One of the best removal spells in Standard. Even though it's 16 mana, you're going to be able to cast it pretty easily with all the mana that you'll be generating through your various means. And then Bulk Up is here for a couple of reasons. For one, it's a great way to speed up a finishing move. You throw this onto a creature that you just reinforce 4 times with her second ability, and then you're just going to double that with this. Then also, it's got Flashback and Buried. So in case this ends up being discarded, if you use their first ability, you can try and bring it back to the graveyard by Flashback. So there aren't a lot of spells in red with Flashback, but that is one in Standard that you can use for that purpose. But you're really going to want to just cast it from your hand, and it will help you win faster that way. Okay, so that is deck number 1. As you can see, it wins really fast when things go your way. And I've had it be somewhat resilient because of Chaos Warp and Dragonhawk and things like that, helping to clear the board on my opponent's side. Let me show you my Peasant deck that really holds its own too. Alright, this one is a Peasant deck that is mainly built to get around one of her main weaknesses, which is a lack of card draw that mono red has right now. So in order to do that, we have some cards in here that will help draw things for us. We got Meddling Youths. When a detected creature you control attacks, investigate. So that means you're going to be creating a clue token every time this creature attacks. And then Aurelia, the Law Above. When a creature you control attacks, draw a card. So, and then with Jolene, creating gold tokens. That's not really going to help you draw, but it is going to help you get a lot of mana. But, you know, when a creature you control attacks, if that creature has power 4 or more, create 2 gold tokens. So you're going to be creating 6 gold tokens every turn if all of your creatures are on the board and attacking. So that is my main way of keeping things going as far as refreshing our hand, making sure we have the cards that we want in play. We got Cryptex, Raucous Theater, and Echoing Deeps for the red conversion, and that is going to help fuel Koth Fire of Resistance and being the main damage cog in this deck, because it's also going to be converting 2 gems to red. But if the support has 7 or more shield, when a red gem is destroyed, deal 3 damage to your opponent's planeswalker. So we're going to be creating tons of red gems for the Koth Fire Resistance to be dealing a bunch of damage to our opponent. And then Meddling Youth, Jolene, and Aurelia are there to help get things going. Though, you know, if you play the second ability on Jolene, that's going to actually be a decent amount of damage that you're going to be doing, along with Bulk Up, which doubles the power of target creature you control until end of turn. So if you use the second ability on Jolene and she's not reinforced yet, that means you're going to be making her a 24/24. Bulk Up is going to be making her, 24/20 or whatever it is, because it's 5 times 4 on her toughness. But we're really just worried about her power in that case. So that's actually pretty decent. And with the gold and everything that you're going to be generating, all the mana you're going to be converting, you're just going to be getting a lot of mana into your hand. And that's why you need draw in this deck. It's really important to have that Aurelia down doing things for you. But the nice thing about Aurelia, though, is it does have haste and it is gaining you life. So this is, I would say, just become one of the most important creatures in the game, especially in Peasant for Standard, because of what it will do for you. Is just always doing so much. So this deck is really good in Peasant events. You don't necessarily have to use it there, because as you can see in my gameplay here, I'm just running this in Training Grounds. I'm doing just fine. It's definitely a slower win than my hardcore dragon deck, but kind of should be, right? A deck full of rares and uncommons probably shouldn't be winning at the same pace as one full of masterpieces and mythics. So Still, this deck is really fun to use because it's so much less raw power than a lot of things you'll run into at the platinum level, but it still holds its own really well. So it's also pretty satisfying to beat those mythic heavy decks with a deck like this, and it's really good. So there you have it. These are the decks that I think do the best to get around her limitations and emphasize her strengths. So I hope you like them, and let's go get into grades. Okay, we're giving grades out now. I gotta warn you, these are probably gonna be all over the place, but let's just get through it. Max HP, not the best, kind of in the slightly below average range, so giving her a C minus on that. As planeswalkers like Angrath keep getting more and more HP on them, planeswalkers that are hovering around the 100 HP range are going to look more and more outclassed as the game progresses. So, mana spread, I would say is pretty decent, but nothing amazing. If she had a little bit more mana on red, that would make her even more amazing, but 8 is fine. I'm giving her an A minus on the mana spread. Still going to hold its own in most situations, so it's fine. Ability 1, very situational. There are times where it will definitely help you cast some cards that you would have not been able to get to on a gem match, so sometimes that will come in handy, but most of the time it's not something you're going to want to spam or do anything like that with it. So it's getting a C minus for me. It does sometimes have relevance, but a lot of times it does not. Ability 2, my favorite ability of hers, besides the passive, of her 3 abilities that cost loyalty, this is my favorite. I've won a lot of games with it alone, just throwing it onto the right creature at the right time, putting me over the top with it. So I'm going to give it actually an A minus, which might sound high to a lot of people, but the objective that I'm usually doing with this planeswalker is just winning and winning fast. And this ability is great for that. For everything else, maybe not so much. So I can't give it that much higher of a grade there. So there we go. Ability 3, also very situational. It's definitely gotten me out of some jams, but it's very expensive. And there's a lot of times where it's really not the right play to go for. But sometimes, you're just back against the wall. You really need to get rid of things on your opponent's side if you want a fighting chance in the match that you're in. So I'm going to give it a C. It can help with certain things, but a lot of times it's just not the right play. Her passive ability, though, is fantastic. I'm giving it an S because there is one card that really exploits a glaring weakness in this ability, and that is Desert. It's going to punish you for converting to red, and you have no choice in whether or not you're converting to red. So if you don't have something in your deck to help you get rid of a desert, then it's game over for you. So that's the only reason it's not an S plus passive for me. But other than that, it's great and really the main reason to use her. Followed by a distant second, her ability 2. Versatility. I don't feel like she's very versatile at all. I think that she does one thing and does one thing well, which is get aggressive with creatures, get them out fast, and beat face with it. Beyond that, she's really not a good choice for anything else in this game. So she's, for me, a quick battle all-star. For everything else, there's literally almost every other walker. So I'm going to give her a C minus for versatility because she's just kind of a one-trick pony for me. Venturing outside of that is not a good idea with her. Same thing, card utility. Her abilities don't do a lot for you in that regard. Her passive is the only thing that gives you advantage in card utility because you can either double up on gem conversion or just ignore it and rely on the passive, which can sometimes also work as well. But beyond that, She doesn't do a lot for spells. In fact, she's kind of a detriment if you're using a lot of spells, because sometimes you'll throw away a spell that you really need. And if your strategy is spell focused, this actually isn't going to do much for you anywhere. For a Planeswalker that's usually known as a spell slinger, she's actually not really good with running a spell heavy deck. So she gets a C in card utility. She's great for running large creatures with, because her passive and her second ability really give you an advantage when it comes to winning fast with them. But beyond that, there are much better Planeswalkers to enhance your cards with. And fun. I would say that she is fun if you use her the right way, but I bet you she's going to be incredibly frustrating for people who don't like to play creature-based aggro. Fortunately, that's a really easy strategy to build for, and she makes it very easy to do that. So if that's the type of deck that you like to run, then you're going to have a lot of fun with her. For everything else, you're probably not. So I'm giving her an A- with the caveat that if you play her the right way, she can be very fun because she wins games really fast. But if you're not playing her that way, then she's probably not going to be a lot of fun for you. So my final grade for her, it's actually going to be a B-. So as you could see, my grades went from really high to really low to really high to really low. So it averages out to a B- there. And like I said, she's not going to be a great walker for intricate strategies. She's all about going aggro with creatures and winning fast. So if that's your idea of a walker that you want to play with, she might be all right for you there. I think because of her passive being so strong, she's going to be better than Koth 1 a lot of times. I think she's better than, like, you know, the bottom of the barrel mono red walkers such as Jessica and Luca and Planeswalkers like that. But I don't think that she measures up to even like Chandra Hope's Beacon, Chandra Dressed to Kill. Either Jaya's, I think, still are probably better than her. And Koth 2, I like a lot more for just general running different strategies with than her. So that is my take on Chandra Flameshaper. Let me know what you guys think. Would you say I'm pretty on base with this, or do you think that I'm crazy for rating her even this high? I know at least one person will be. I think Paladin Robin and I are kind of in agreement with her, where she's very good for one specific niche and not great for others. But if that is the niche that you love playing, then this is the walker for you. So thank you to Webcore, as always, for sending me Planeswalkers. There have been some lately that I really liked and others that I really haven't. But this one is somewhere in the middle, where I was really high on her at first, found all her weaknesses, then kind of found what her strengths really were. And so I do like her. If you see me running her in training grounds, I'm probably running something super aggro. So I'm looking forward to all the fun things that I want to do for my channel. If you haven't been checking out my live streams, I've been doing this Chase or Not series, where I take a mythic or masterpiece from the current set and determine whether or not it's worth spending your hard-earned resources on, in my opinion. So check those out. I'll put a link to the playlist at the end of the video so you can just keep on watching. So hopefully I'll see you there. And if not, I'll see you at the next Planeswalker review.